Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm pleased to call this meeting for the Lakewood City Council this Monday, August 15, 2022 to order. Madam Clerk, if you'd please call the roll.
Councilmember Anderson,
Here.
Councilmember Bell,
Here.
Councilmember Boki, Councilmember Brandstetter,
Present.
Councilmember Farmer,
Here.
Deputy Mayor Moss,
Here.
and Mayor Whalen.
Present.
You have a quorum.
Thank you very much. Now, please stand and join me in a brief moment of silence in honor of our men and women serving our great nation overseas as well as at home, followed by our Pledge of Allegiance to the nation's flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Well, thank you all for attending tonight's meeting, and it is our pleasure to start most of our regular sessions with proclamations and presentations. And tonight, we are honored to present a proclamation recognizing the life and achievements of one of Lakewood's own residents, George Weyerhaeuser Sr. And for this, I call upon our Councilmember Dawn Anderson, former mayor, who helped prepare the proclamation, and Phyllis George, family member. Ms. George, if you'd accompany Mr. Anderson at the podium, he'll present the proclamation, and then we'll take a photograph, as well as any other family members who'd like to come, please. Yeah, good to see you all. Thank you.
Hi. I think I met Dave in passing once. Don Anderson too.
Nice to meet you.
I did think you were Dave.
I'm nervous. Thank you.
Well, this is a great pleasure for me. I have to admit it's something special because, like many in the Northwest, fewer than proportionally than used to be. I was raised on timber dollars. I'm a native of Southwestern Oregon. My maternal grandfather dropped out of school when he was 14, and his name the rest of his life was Whistle, because the first job he had was whistle punk out in the woods. He went by nothing else. My paternal grandfather immigrated. His first job was as a boat lumber porter. Today they call that a forklift. And he was the head foreman in the largest mill on the West Coast. My father worked the green chain on that mill to put himself through college. And then his first job was with Weyerhaeuser Company in North Bend. And that's how we got up here, a transfer to headquarters. So it was also a great pleasure in my business life to be acquainted with your father, a gentleman and truly a class act. So it's my pleasure to read this proclamation. Whereas George H.W. Weyerhaeuser Sr. was a longtime resident of Lakewood, and whereas in his over 95 years, he made remarkable contributions to the community, both through his leadership and his philanthropy, and whereas he served in the U.S. Navy from 1944 to 1946 and was honorably discharged as an aviation electronics technician first class, and whereas he returned from the Navy to attend and graduate from Yale University, and whereas he married Wendy Wagner, the love of his life, at Lakewold Gardens, her family home, and whereas he worked in many capacities for the Weyerhaeuser Company, beginning with college summers setting choker in the woods before rising to become president and CEO at the age of 39 in 1966, serving in that capacity until 1991 and continuing to serve as board chairman through 1999. And whereas throughout his career, George Weyerhaeuser Sr. oversaw significant growth of the company, including a number of major timberland acquisitions, and had an enduring impact on the evolution of forest management at Weyerhaeuser and across the industry. And whereas he brought transformational changes and advances in sustainable high-yield forestry and wood products research, as well as expansion into overseas market, among many other achievements. And whereas George Weyerhaeuser Sr. was a community leader, mentor, and forward thinker who should be recognized for his profound impression he has left on the Pacific Northwest. Now, therefore, the Lakewood City Council do hereby honor the life and achievements of George H.W. Weyerhaeuser Sr., an extraordinary civic and business leader, and remembers him for his contributions to the community and the forest products industry. Proclaimed this 15th day of August 2022, Jason Whalen, Mayor.
Thank you.
Somebody want to speak for the family?
Yes, thank you, Don, and the rest of the council. My parents moved here in the mid-50s from Eugene, Oregon, and it couldn't have been a better place for all of us to grow up. In fact, some of us never left. My wife from Chicago says that I cried until she agreed to move back here. And we're all still rooted in the history of the place around Gravelly Lake. We still refer to all the houses as who owned it in maybe 1970.
Yeah.
I live in the Fiskins house. My brother for 30-something years has lived in the Morgan's house. It's just the way we identify things because the history, the place, the beauty of it, people, couldn't be a finer place. We all love Lakewood, and thank you very much.
Thank you.
Invite any,
Yeah, we'll-
any other family
I'm too
members?
shy.
Will join us down front. We'll take a photograph. Love to celebrate these things for our own history.
No, I didn't.
Well, thank you for that. And now we turn to the American Rescue Plan Act sub-recipient presentations. And I believe for this, we'll have our deputy planning manager, our planning manager, Tiffany Spear, who will introduce the representative from West Pierce Fire and Rescue, as well as the senior development director for the YMCA, who will provide us an overview.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Tiffany Spear, here tonight to discuss ARPA, as you just mentioned. So there have been a number of presentations to the council already, including from Communities and Schools Lakewood, the BIPOC Business Accelerator that was coordinated through Pierce County. And then about a month ago, we had Clover Park School District, Lehigh, and Tacoma Pro Bono. This evening is two more, West Pierce Fire and Rescue, and then also, as you said, the YMCA. So I will, without further ado, ask Hallie to come on up and provide the presentation regarding what they've been able to do with the funds year to date and then what their plans are next.
I'd like to start just by thanking the council as well as city staff for actually awarding us these funds. They're going to do some great things for our community in the realm of emergency management. So what we've spent the money on thus far is we put a down payment on upgrading our EOC, our dock, our Department Operations Center that we would utilize in an emergency, as well as all of the backup locations for that, to be able to utilize technology during an emergency. We realized during COVID that we were challenged in that respect. What we were doing is, utilizing our laptops and as opposed to like having cameras set up and having like a really nice sound and things like that. So we're going to be upgrading our Department Operations Center, as well as all of the backup locations with technology. So that's great. The second project we're doing is working on our limited English proficiency plan, which is how we notify folks who don't speak English during an emergency or a disaster. So we're working on some messaging and doing some translation behind that. And the final thing we're going to be doing is putting up a ham radio center so that we can communicate with the city emergency operations center should we ever have a major disaster where communications are a challenge. So again, thank you all for the opportunity. And if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Well, thank you very much. We very much appreciate you coming tonight and sharing with us the impact of the investment made, the ARPA funds. Any questions? Thank you, Chief.
All right.
Appreciate that. Good to
Thank
see
you
you.
so much.
You bet.
And our second presenter this evening is Jesse Palmer from the YMCA of King and Pierce, I'm sorry, Pierce and Kitsap counties. The focus of the YMCA award, if the council will recall, was really about childcare and teen mental health and teen activities. And so there's been some activity in the first 2 quarters, but again, this will also be conversation about what the YMCA is planning to do in future quarters with their funding. So I believe we have Mr. Palmer. Yep, there he is. Great, thanks.
Well, thank you for the opportunity to present tonight, give an update on the Lakewood Family YMCA and the ARPA-funded programs. My name is Jesse Palmer. I'm a senior executive at the Y and have been providing oversight for the ARPA agreement. We're very appreciative of the city's partnership and the opportunity to support the city in its recovery efforts. So I'd like to provide an overview of the Y, our ARPA scope of services, the rollout of the ARPA-funded programs, some marketing and communications of the benefit, some numbers served to date, and then next steps and strategy for continued rollout. The Lakewood Y has been serving the community for about 30 years now. We have that community center. I think that's how most people are familiar with the Y, but we also have a presence in elementary and middle schools. So we're currently in 2 elementary schools here in Clover Park, providing before and after school childcare. We're also in 5 of the middle schools, providing after school enrichment for middle schoolers. And the focus there is to help support those kids in academic achievement, health enrichment, social and emotional enrichment. The number of people that we serve at the Y, specifically the Lakewood Y, has been impacted by COVID. Pre-COVID, our center and our outreach services, we reached about 17,000, 18,000 people per year. But because of COVID, that number is, well, we're on track to serve about 12,000 people this year. So it's been a drastic cut. So again, when we look at this ARPA funding, it is a lifeline to keep us going. So as Tiffany mentioned, our ARPA scope of services was primarily focused on youth programming. We know that the disruption in schooling and society at large had a pretty drastic effect on kids and their learning, their health, and social emotional enrichment and development. And we identified programs that we believe would help support kids in succeeding in school and in life. And with the City of Lakewood ARPA funding, we had an opportunity here to make sure that young people who might not have access to the Y could receive these benefits and services through the Y. And so really with the ARPA funding, what we're trying to do here is either offset the cost or reduce the cost so that all people can access the Y. And we started with a gradual rollout of the ARPA funded programs. We initially started with our before and after school childcare program. Looking at the schools we were at, Custer and Idlewild, those schools serve predominantly non-white students, but they also serve a high percentage of low-income students. And we figured that would be an easy way to meet the eligibility requirements for the ARPA program. The other program that we rolled this out to was our Leaders in Training program in time for summer. A lot of these leaders we train help provide the counselor or oversight of our summer day camp program. And then in June, we expanded these ARPA programs and services to our summer day camp program. Part of this marketing and communications has been an internal marketing approach. So of course, we needed to train our staff on how to process these ARPA, how we do the intake, but then also how we qualify people for receiving the benefit. We've also promoted this within our centers, so to let our current Y members know that this benefit exists. We've done some external promotion. We have our website, which is our primary marketing tool. We've established its own ARPA dedicated page, so a person in the city of Lakewood could go to this resource, figure out how this program works, and then also complete the eligibility test. But then we've also done continued promotion. We do summer meals at the Y where anyone can walk up and receive a meal. So we've been telling people that this exists. We have a mobile outreach service. So we've been in some of these communities, these qualified census tracts, to tell people that this benefit exists. And in late July, we opened up our Y as a cooling center so that people could cool off from the heat. And again, telling people that this benefit exists. So the impact has not been where we had wanted it or expected. I mentioned our 2 childcare sites. Those 2 sites serve about 50, 60 kids per month. However, only 6 of the kids met the ARPA eligibility requirements. So only 6 of the kids are receiving some type of benefit at those childcare sites. I mentioned our leaders in training program, and we had about a dozen teens involved in this program, but only 3 of the teens met the ARPA eligibility requirements. And then I mentioned summer day camp as well, and we had about 10 people complete the eligibility quiz, but only 2 qualified for the benefit. So next steps, we recognize that we have a lot of work ahead of us to get this benefit out there to inform people. We know that back to school events are coming up here in the next month, so we're going to continue to promote before and after school childcare, these programs at the Y, and that the ARPA benefit is available. We have a list of people or households who live within those qualified census tracts, so we've also been talking about a direct mail piece. We understand that the rollout has been limited to programming, 3 programs so far. So we're going to continue to roll this out to additional programs. We've got soccer in the fall, basketball this winter, swim lessons, gymnastics, arts. But we're hoping that continued communication, awareness, and more rollout or additional rollout of additional programs will hopefully entice people to come in and learn more about this program. Are there any questions that I can answer about our programs at the Y?
Yes, Mr. Branstetter.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for your presentation and your candor about both successes and challenges. That it does seem that one of the things that has restricted how valuable the program has been able to impact the community has been the people meeting the ARPA guidelines, which are something that is a city interpretation of guidelines we were given. But what about those guidelines is most problematic, that is limiting eligibility? I mean, is there some relatively simple change in the guidelines that you think would make a significant difference in terms of the number of people that would be able to do that you would like us to consider?
That's an interesting question. I don't know that. So I think the guidelines are somewhat fixed as far as living within a qualified census tract or meeting the income requirements. So I guess if there was consideration of changing that, perhaps looking at the income, I think people, for the most part, haven't been able to qualify because on the income, at least, because of the 200% federal poverty limit.
Mm-hmm. So could you just explain that
Yeah.
200% of the property limit, there just aren't a lot of people that fall under that in your clientele.
At least who's completed the eligibility requirement or the eligibility test that we have on our website. The two reasons why people haven't qualified or they don't live within those qualified census tracts. So that's one reason, but then it's also they don't meet the federal poverty requirements. And so depending on what size household they're in, what income, if they don't meet that federal requirement, then they're not eligible to receive the benefit.
Okay, well, I do know that some of the rules around ARPA rules and others are guidelines that we could massage to fit Lakewood, like to be able to go and do that. So, I guess that I would be interested if you and your staff could look and say, there are some slight adjustments that might actually open up the availability of the services these ARPA dollars can fund to young people in Lakewood, which is in the end, part of the bottom line to be able to go and do that as the pandemic begins to get a little bit smaller in the rearview mirror.
Can I connect with Tiffany on the income question or those guidelines?
Well, either on the income or on the census tract of residents, that it may be difficult to meet both. And so I'd be interested in if an either or rule would create more folks eligible. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Palmer, a quick question. So ARPA funds aside just for a moment, how many Lakewood kids are accessing programs at the Y with some financial scholarship or assistance?
I'd have to get back to you on that number. I would say between 2,000, 3,000 kids are currently Y members and participating in programs. And again, that's down from previous levels. We used to be 4,000, 5,000 kids. Our membership at a whole at the Lakewood Y, again, has been impacted by COVID. So I think we're at about 10,000 members.
Does the Y still have the policy that any child or family member who wishes to attend and is challenged financially is able to attend?
Right. So we have a financial assistance program that primarily is for membership. So if a kid came up and wanted to participate in the program or participate at the Y, we have a vehicle to make sure that we can scholarship them and they can get access. So yeah, that still exists.
Great. All right. Well, thank you. Any other questions? Thank you very much for the update. Oh, Mr. Anderson.
It just not for tonight, but maybe the city attorney could opine on the qualifications. For example, 80%, a lot of ARPA programs are going out at rent assistance, for example, 80% of AMI or average median income, and that's higher than twice the poverty rate. So there's a delta of about 10 grand. So something like that might help.
Any other questions? Well, we appreciate the update and also thank you for being a steadfast partner in delivering good services to the residents, including the kids here in Lakewood.
Thank you.
Yeah, you bet. That is it for tonight's section on proclamations and presentations. We now turn to the public comment portion of tonight's agenda. Public comments are accepted by mail, email, or by live, virtual, or in-person comment. Comments may be sent in advance by mail or email to Ms. Schumacher, our city clerk, at 6000 Main Street Southwest here in Lakewood. or her email address at bschumacher@cityoflakewood.us. Comments received up to an hour before the meeting have been provided to the city council electronically. Madam Clerk, if you could please read the names of those who have submitted comments in advance.
Mayor, we received written comments in advance from Christina Minetti and Karen Rip.
Thank you. Members of the audience may comment on items related to any matter related to city business under the public comment period. Comments are limited to 3 minutes per person. Please note that there is a public hearing tonight on the proposed vacation of the terminal westerly 36 feet of 88th Avenue Court Southwest, west of the intersection of Wadsworth Street Southwest. So if you'd like to make comments regarding that particular street vacation, please reserve your comments under the public hearing portion of tonight's regular agenda. Virtual comments are also available. If you'd like to provide live public comment virtually, you can join our Zoom meeting as an attendee by dialing the telephone number on the screen, entering the meeting ID number indicated, and pressing *9 to use the raise the hand feature. Outside of public comments, those attendees on Zoom will continue to have the ability to raise their hand virtually for the duration of that portion of the meeting. And you can certainly listen in, but you will not be acknowledged or called upon outside of the public comment period. So I will first, in fairness, call on those tonight on Zoom, and then we'll be followed by those folks in person who have signed up to speak. And I have the various sign-in sheets for both the regular public comment and the public hearing portion. So on Zoom, the first is Mr. Haugen.
Thank you, Dennis Haugen from Sioux Falls, South Dakota. Can you hear me?
Yes.
It was very interesting. At the end of the meeting, I was called a racist. But you want to also remind you that Justice Thomas has been called a racist, Senator Tim Scott, and hundreds more of Black, highly competent, successful leaders in the United States have been called racist. But that's part of the language problem. You see, you got to look and see what the meaning of racist is, because there's one meaning in the dictionary, and there's another meaning out there of racist. So I'm not bothered by that at all, because I take into consider the source. But there's a bigger problem on kind of, in 2018 and 2020, your area voted for open borders. You were well warned in advance of the election. And it's probably going to be a couple more years, 4 more years before you can fire the people that got you in the mess, because what is now happening is before they get across the border, they're asking to go to sanctuary states. And they're also receiving debit cards. This is what I've seen on the news from those news organizations that are not influenced by the Chinese communists. But then what happens? Well, some of them carry this fentanyl. And fentanyl is interesting because it's a very dangerous chemical. And normally when we think of a drug, we think about the person who takes the drug. But now the transportation has become a hazard, because the different mixtures that they're able to send may be deadly. And they're often carried on buses and cars. So I would say, keeping it to what would be interesting for Lakewood, you probably better check in those buses that come across the line and make sure there isn't any fentanyl in there. Because in Seattle, they're using fentanyl on the buses. But basically, COVID has been over for a long time as a pandemic. This is the new pandemic. This is what we're up against now. And so that's just kind of a caution for you. But you're also by a distribution center where they can get debit cards. It's right next door to you. So a bus may pull up there any day and start unloading like they do in Washington, D.C. or New York. Thank you very much.
Next, Mr. Bunchy Carter.
Oh, wait, can y'all hear me?
Can you hear me?
Better now.
Much better. There we go. Thank you very much. Okay. Well, as he stated, my name is Bunchy Carter. I'm the Minister of Defense of the Black Panther Party. First of all, before I even get to what I wanted to say, to the gentleman that was speaking before me, and I'm not going to say your name because you just don't deserve that much, but for you to be called a racist and not have a problem with that is troubling in and of itself. And that all of the people that you named that have also been called racist are not the most stand-up individuals that you would like to be compared to. So just be cautious the next time you go into that kind of conversation about what you've been called and how you're not worried about it. So anyway, now that that's out the way, I think I mentioned this last time we were here that we had a slight problem with the police doing their job the way it's supposed to be done. I still will not name the community member by name simply because it is her right to have her privacy. However, I will say this. I watched a YouTube video of a previous city council meeting that I was not able to make for reasons beyond my control. And you were decorating many different officers. Now, mind you, I'm the type of person that feel like if you do something great, you should be decorated. I'm not going to speak in terms of all of those individuals that you had standing there, but there's one in particular who has taken it upon himself to decide and determine how the law should be applied in public with the people. So Josh Northcutt, if you can hear me, or if you ever at any point hear me, no one understand that we are aware of what you did when you went to take the report about the incident between the dogs and the neighbors in Lakewood. And I'm pretty sure you'll know what I mean when you hear that. The reality of the matter is there's been a string of incidents where citizens have been treated like criminals when they were calling simply to make complaints against other people. Now, mind you, in this particular situation, she was Black, and the person who she was making the call against was white. That ain't always the case, and I can admit that. I'm not a racist, by the way. I got love for all people who have love for things that are proper and just. But going to a woman who has a disability, who has been assaulted by her neighbor who has no physical ailments whatsoever, and then for that woman to face a charge and potentially have to pay $200 to this woman who assaulted her is criminal in and of itself. So I don't feel that I have to keep asking for the police to do their job correctly, because there's a reason why when you do the things you do, people call us. There's a reason for that, because people like to feel safe and they like to know that if they have an issue in their community, that can be dealt with without anyone dying in the process. Oh yeah, justice for Sayi Joaquin, all power to the people.
Next, Alviano X.
Hello, good evening. Can y'all hear me?
Yes.
Okay, good. Again, as I've had to state for the last 6+ months now, it's actually Ovunayo. Ovunayo. It's simple. Anyways, General Ovunayo, Black Panther Party. Wanted to address a couple of things. Firstly being, I don't know why we still letting this guy, this racist man, Hogan, on the calls. He don't even live in Washington, never addresses anything relevant to the city. And he comes on here and makes remarks that are very, very much against the community. Again, I move that y'all move to ban this person, or really anybody from out of state, from speaking. Doesn't make any sense. To continue forward, I don't know why it's not even being tabled to speak about the trees, the library, or the educational system. I'm bunching that all together because it's all relevant to all the same thing. It is all racially segregated shit. Excuse my language. It affects the minority neighborhoods in particular. Now, if this was over in Steilacoom, I guarantee you they wouldn't tear down the library. In fact, they'd turn it into a historical museum. And, you know, your buddy from Steilacoom, sure, they come in there with a nice little video stunting all over y'all. Yep. I remember that little video had a theme song and everything. Wonder how much that cost. To continue. The library being torn down is a removal of access to necessary resources for many community members who in that neighborhood are predominantly, as I said, minority. As well, the trees are in a predominantly minority neighborhood as well. The people that will be affected by that, that's countrywide, that's worldwide. I mean, the rainforest is burning and you want to cut down endangered trees that take hundreds of years to grow. And then the educational system is a laughing stock. I mean, I don't know how y'all can continue to push this bull and sell schools to Amazon. You know, you sold a middle school to Amazon to build a big giant warehouse right over there in Woodbrook. You could have used that land if you were going to tear down a school to build homes. How about them tiny homes? Y'all paying attention yet? Justice for Saeed Joaquin, all power to the people.
Next is, I don't see any other hands raised on the virtual screen. Is there anyone out there on Zoom that wishes to address the council during the public comment portion of tonight's agenda? If not, then I'll move to those physically present on the sign-in sheet. The first is Tamara Cook.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Hi, I'm here to talk about our utilities, communication utilities, which there aren't any. I'm on disability and I'm being forced to use cell phones that are have a, usually they have agreements that I'm disagreeing with. I won't check a little box that I can't understand. I took 1.5 years to learn networking. Then I had to learn enterprise systems. And then I had to go to a law library to understand understand the agreements that we're signing. I took corporate media back in the 1990s, and I understand how these devices, how broadcasting works and how we, I'm going to bypass that. Anyways, basically, when you're checking this little device, when you're checking this box and agreeing to these devices, you're basically agreeing to a false environment sometimes. Network TV, you have a little device, little thing that comes in and out of the screen, and it has little movements inside. That was back in the 1990s. It said, you're watching something that's current. It's not there no more, not in any of the air broadcasts I get. I can't keep a device, I can't keep a device from being hacked. Why? It's because I checked that box and we don't know what these third parties are doing. There's no information what the third parties are all about, or if they're even giving away to other third parties. You have these devices next to your head. You don't know what the saturation reuptake does. Saturation does, the RF signals does to the saturation of the soft tissue of your brain. I can't even go back to a regular telephone system. I've done my due diligence. I want a telephone system that I have my privacy back. And I don't know if you can give me this, but I really hope that we all can have some sort of a conversation that will do that again. I go around to these businesses in town. Nobody puts their business license on the doors anymore. Everything's being run over the internet and nobody's being protected. Can I go a little further?
You have a few more seconds. Yes.
We don't have anything that's any brick and mortar facilities that are protecting the little man. Not everybody can do what I did. We don't have a police station that's going to go. You can say, hey, my device is messed up and have I had a bot network takeover? Most people don't know what that is. My doctor's using, okay, I'll be here next time. I'll
Thank
be
you.
here next month. But please, we need to have a conversation about this.
Thank you very much. Next, Oneida Arnold.
Oneida, but that's okay.
Sorry about that.
It's a tough one. My name is Oneida Arnold. Thank you for having me, Mayor, Deputy Mayor, and City Council. I spoke 2 weeks ago with the group, and this is a group of seniors from Village Apartments, and they are being squeezed out of their housing because their rent continues to rise. And why am I presenting this to you? Because policy is what you do. And I think policy is what you need to do to prevent this from happening, not just with Village Apartments, but I'm sure you're aware everywhere. But you can, only address what's happening here in Lakewood. But I also work with unhoused people, and I don't want to see this group unhoused. These are seniors on fixed income and low income. Their places are very modest. They should not be paying the price that they are being asked to pay for this. It's what they can afford, what they could afford before the initial big increase a year ago, which was $200 to $300. They have another increase of $50 that they're going to be facing in addition to that in October. So my ask is, what can you do to help these seniors? I do want to give credit to David, and I think his last name is pronounced Bauer or Bower.
Viewer.
You were, okay. Because he did meet with us right away, and he gave some resources. Unfortunately, a couple of the resources are really for families. And these are people who have, probably are out of that stage, but they do need help. And I don't want to see them on, on the street. And I think that you all can do something around policy for that. It's the Village Apartments, and they're not luxury. They're not in a lavish, wonderful area. They're in an industrial area. There's no reason for the rents to be that high, except that, they can ask that cost. I don't know. But thank you, whatever you can do. And by the way, we do meet tomorrow with Janine from LASA, LASA, and we're going to see what they can do. But for you all, policy is what you can do for all of the seniors in particular and people of low income. Thank you.
Thank you. T. Snow. Okay. Gwen Harris.
Okay, I just want to add to what she was saying, that I invite y'all to come down to our apartments on 110th Street. There is nothing but trash right next to the railroad tracks. There's big old garbages, there's trucks, and we live in the ghetto. And then that's what it's all about. And we're tired of being, oh my God, I just wish y'all would come see our apartments. Just roll down the street, look at the roads and see, because we had a killing over there last year. We've had 3 cars stolen, over the last year. And we're just trying to make our payments and be happy. Most of us are old. I'm 61, so I know, but I just wish you guys would maybe think about driving through there and say, hey, look, she wasn't lying. She lives in the ghetto. So thank you.
Thank you. Retta Barker.
I need to qualify something. I live at the Village Apartments as well, but I'm not low income. Everyone around me pretty much is. I work right over at the other building there. But this is my new prop. It's a roll of duct tape. And I have to keep this in my car because somebody decided that while I was out volunteering services to try and help the very people that are trashing up the area that I live in, someone decided they needed to try to break into my car last night. I serve a good God, and he made sure that they didn't get in. But now there's a big old hole in my window. So this is how I had to repair it temporarily. I don't know how much influence this group has with maybe getting the police presence in that area increased just a little bit, but I'm willing to exchange some of my volunteer time and services to work with you in order to get you to talk to the police and maybe increase some of their presence to help us out. We've got trucks that are over there that are disabled, not running. Hoods are up, nobody's in them. We have transients that are living in the area and they are being destructive. I come home sometimes late at night because I don't just volunteer in Lakewood. I also drive to Seattle 3 days out of every week. And when I come home, I have to do this all day, trying to get out of my car to make sure that there's no one behind me coming up to possibly cause me harm. So I'm just asking if I can make an exchange with you. I will give my own volunteer time. I don't care what you need me to do, but I'm asking you to give me some support, our area, our residents some support in order to increase the police presence in that area. Have them drive through. They can honk the horn. At least I can fall asleep then. Because now I'm losing sleep over people doing things in our community that are kind of frightening and uncomfortable. And this is not a good thing to have to carry with you because you don't know at what moment or what time someone is gonna bust your window trying to get nothing out of your car. I had an empty box in my car. That's the only thing that could have attracted them. You know, so I need your help.
Understood. So advancing some police presence and sending code enforcement are things we can do. Rent control in Washington is another matter that we can't do. We don't have legislative authority for that, but we will work on getting some police presence or at least code enforcement out there, ma'am, to take a look. Well, having you here is helpful. Thank you. Mhm. Next, Christina Minetti.
Good evening, Mayor Whalen. Good evening, council members. I'm here with an environmental update. I'm sorry for my voice. As you probably know, for more than 1 year, I've been waiting to make a SEPA appeal of the speculative warehouse at 123rd in Springbrook. The date was set for August 24th. As you probably know, this 9-acre parcel has 114 Gary Oaks on it. It's also on a floodplain. So the city recognized the Department of Fish and Wildlife's designation of this area as a critical area and required $417,000 in mitigation fees, but there was no plan what to do with that money. So that was a problem. It was inadequate mitigation. Nevertheless, the developer was going to, or is appealing even that $417,000 because he feels that, or they feel that their consultants found no critical area there, so they shouldn't have to pay anything. It's actually a critical area twice over. It's also on a 100-year floodplain, and it constitutes an aquifer recharge zone. So that means that's where the water goes in that we use. This is our water source. The water table on that property, in some areas, it's only 6 feet below the surface. 9 feet, 6 feet, 11 feet, 12 feet, and 14 feet, I think, were their test wells. And so they're building a warehouse on top of one of Lakewood's main recharge zones. That's our water source. And I understand that the city has also signed away 80% of Aquifer A to Puyallup and Spanaway because they already ran out of water for the next 20 years. It's supposed to start next year. Maybe you know more about that than I do. I just found out about it. It's quite disturbing. And then they pave over 9 acres, or 7.5 probably, because it's only 85% that's going to be paved over, of our recharge zone. So they sell the water, then they prevent water from going into it. My SEPA appeal was dismissed on procedural grounds. One of them was that it wasn't timely. On the announcement from the city, it said 21 days. I did it within 21 days. The developer said, no, it's supposed to be 14 days. And the hearing examiner said, yeah, it's up to me. I was supposed to check what you told me. Well, not you, but whoever wrote up the thing. I checked other ones from before. When I wasn't involved, it said 14 days. This one said 21 days. And it makes me wonder, like, makes me think bad things about my city, right? A pro se citizen appellant, you know, it makes me imagine the worst. So then I found out there's PFAS there. You probably know what PFAS is. And the hearing examiner, when I wrote the request for reconsideration, he said, no, there's nothing new there, not new information. Didn't care. They don't care about PFAS being flooded all over the city. If they build there, there's going to be more flooding and there's going to be PFAS everywhere. They're going to dig it up. It's going to be in those apartment buildings, cancer, you know, endocrinal problems, everything. Every day you can find new research about this stuff and nobody cares. So in its comprehensive plan, the city proclaims itself to be a trustee of the environment for succeeding generations. Please then begin defending the environment for the people who live here. It should not be up to a private citizen like me to fight these battles. The city must be first and foremost for the people who live here to defend our quality of life against whatever threats might face it. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, James Dunlop.
My name is James Dunlop and I'm a Lakewood resident. Today, I want to talk about ask what public safety means. Is it just theft, trespass, and attack by criminal elements, or knuckleheads, as the mayor puts it? But death and injury come in many forms. Thyroid disease, reduced fertility, high blood pressure during pregnancy, liver, kidney, and testicular cancer. So, if Lakewood residents are at increased risk of these health issues, there's a safety problem. There is evidence that these health issues can be caused by per- and polyfluoroalkyl substances, commonly known as PFAS, as Christina has just talked about. They have been used as fire retardants, for example, on the base. PFAS has spread beyond JBLM, and they have almost certainly contaminated the site on 123rd Street in Springbrook. At the moment, much of the PFAS is contained, helped by the permeability of the surface and the many Gary Oaks on the property. If it rains, the water will be retained. Unfortunately, we've got some knuckleheads who don't understand this. Panattoni own the property, and they're going to turn it into warehouses with mainly impervious surfaces. The city have allowed them to do this, first by rezoning the whole area as industrial, and secondly, by permitting development. If there is a major flooding event, not only will the I-5 be flooded, but the PFAS on the property will be spread around the city more than it already is. And I should mention that in 2016, the EPA were giving a safety limit of 70 parts per trillion in bottled water. I think that's 0.07 micrograms per liter. That is tiny. If you had 0.07 micrograms of plutonium in a liter of water, you probably wouldn't get cancer. At this stage, I ask that the city backtrack. You can't mitigate the project with tree planting. You have to stop the warehouses being built. This can only be done by going to the Superior Court. And if the poisoning of Lakewood is allowed to continue, every city councillor is morally responsible. One of you said in your job interview that you wanted to make Lakewood your forever home. Well, you should understand that your city is becoming contaminated by forever chemicals.
Next, Addo Equidas.
My name's Addo Equitas. I'm the chairman of the Panther Party. They're talking about you poisoning your city. Listen to them. Now, I'm not going to talk about that because I want to talk about them. You have a woman pleading with you, telling you that she'll come out and work for you to help her. You work for her. How many times? do we have to
Point of
say-
order. If he's going to yell, at least he could use his real name.
I'm sorry?
It's a point of order. If you're going to yell at us, at least you could identify yourself by your real name,
My
not
name is Addo
not
Equitas. I'm the
alias,
chairman of the Panther Party.
pseudonym.
Your real name. What's your real name? Is this taking my time?
It is,
Okay, then I'm gonna keep going.
but please be respectful with tone,
I am
sir.
trying to be respectful. I'm trying to plead with you guys like she is.
Did you not
Do your
hear
job.
me respond to her and indicate we're going to increase and take a look at police presence as well as code enforcement, sir, or not? Or were you too busy yelling?
Ask for increased police presence. How many times do we have to ask that the police conduct themselves in a manner that is just to the people? How many times do they have to come and ask for resources and you give them the wrong resources? Stop trying to put a Band-Aid on a broken bone. They are suffering. The people are suffering, and you guys are doing nothing for them.
Well, I disagree with you, but
I'm
continue.
aware that you disagree. But the proof is in the pudding, like you guys like to say. The gentleman that was standing up here earlier with the YMCA, great program. Why was it shocking to nobody that he said, we cover predominantly BIPOC neighborhoods, and it just so happens that they are also predominantly the low-income neighborhoods? Why is that not shocking to none of you? Why is it not shocking to anybody out here? Why is it not as upsetting to you as it is to me? Anderson, I'm sorry I yell. Maybe it's because I'm passionate about making something right. Maybe you should be too. They want extended police presence. I'm going to give it to them. They want people out there to look and try and find resources. We're going to do it. The Panther Party will step up where you fail. All power to the people.
This is a council meeting. It's not drama class. Next, Licentia Immortalis. Next.
Hello, my name is Licentia Immortalis, and I am the National Chief of Staff for the Panther Party. It's very concerning to hear that the city just sold a bunch of water or is going to sell water to Puyallup. Have you not heard that?
We don't sell the water. The Lakewood Water District is an independent.
So they're selling your guys' water, okay? And then you're allowing the water to be poisoned by building this warehouse. That doesn't make sense. Does that make sense?
It's a logical stretch. Continue.
It's not a logical stretch. That's
Yeah.
what's happening. So what are you gonna do when your water is poisoned and they're giving all the water to Puyallup and what was the other city? Spanaway. I mean, that's like water. I mean, that's an essential thing, right? So the other thing is that, I mean, I've been here and I've watched them plead for help, you know, and it just seems like it's, what is it, been 2 weeks? You couldn't send one officer out there? You couldn't try to go talk to one of the landlords out there? You couldn't have tried to offer resources? I mean, you could have done something. I mean, anything. You know, I mean, you just kind of just left them high and dry. I mean, did you guys put a plan into action on how to help them? Any of you? Or is it just now that you're saying that you're going to send law enforcement out there? A man died in police custody 5 days ago on Thursday, who may or may not have had a medical emergency. And then, because I'm going on the witnesses, because I'm not really sure if the officers are really giving the accurate or whatever statements. Because first they said he had a gun, right? There was no gun. Then they said he had a knife. No one's shown a knife. They said he got out of the truck and he was writhing in pain. And 5 police officers showed up with guns out of their vehicles. And then they handcuffed him and put him on his stomach. So Lakewood Police Department is the one investigating it, and they're taking the lead, and no information has been released. No body cam footage, not even his name. It has been erased, like it didn't even happen. There is something seriously wrong with that. So I would really like, if the Lakewood Police Department is investigating, they need to make a statement on what actually happened. Justice for Saeed Joaquin, all power to the people.
Those are the only individuals who've signed up to address the council during this public comment period. However, that doesn't keep folks who have not spoken from addressing the council. Those who have not spoken from addressing the council. Are there any others who wish to address the council during this public comment period who have not spoken and provided their 3 minutes? If not, and before I declare the public comment period closed, questions related to Lakewood Water for those who have an interest are those that can be addressed by Randy Black, the superintendent of Lakewood Water District. He made a presentation on PFAS and a lawsuit that Lakewood Water is involved with nationally. It can be very informative for those who are interested in knowing what they're doing and who they're selling water to and why. The city does not sell water. The city does not control the Lakewood Water District. With that, I'll declare the public comment period closed. We now turn to the consent agenda of tonight's program. Madam Clerk.
A, approval of the minutes of the City Council study session of July 25th, 2022. B, approval of the minutes of the City Council meeting of August 1st, 2022. C, motion number 2022-58, authorizing the execution of an amendment to the agreement with Burke Consulting for the Tree Preservation Code update. D, motion number 2022-59, authorizing the execution of an amendment to the purchase and sale agreement between the City of Lakewood and Lakewood Cinema Plaza LLC for the Wards Lake Park expansion and property acquisition. E, motion number 2022-60, accepting a donation from the Rotary Club of Lakewood in the amount of $11,000 for the replacement of swings at Fort Silicon Park. F, motion number 2022-61, appointing the 2022 through 2023 youth council members.
Thank you. Is there any item which any council member wishes to remove from the consent agenda at this time? If not, is there a motion to adopt the consent agenda as, oh, Mr. Anderson. So is there a motion to adopt the consent? Thank you. Is there a second? Second. Any further discussion? All those in favor of adoption of the consent agenda as presented, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Consent agenda has been adopted. We now move to the regular agenda. Public hearings and appeals is first up. This is the date set for the public hearing to consider the proposed vacation of the terminal westerly 36 feet of 88th Avenue Court Southwest, west of the intersection with Wadsworth Street Southwest. And for this, I believe we are going to have Frank Sawatsky, our Associate Civil Engineer, join us virtually for an overview before we open the public testimony.
Good evening. This is Frank Sawatsky, City of Lakewood Public Works, and my staff report has been presented to the council. I'll go ahead and read it now. This is vacation request summary. Tacoma Pierce County Habitat for Humanity, the owner of real property directly adjacent to the right-of-way to be vacated, has submitted a request to vacate the terminal westerly 63 and 77/100 feet of 88th Avenue Court Southwest, west of the intersection with Wadsworth Street Southwest. The portion of right-of-way to be vacated is approximately 1,471 square feet in size and abuts parcels number 0219212108 and 0219212116. The legal representative of owner of all abutting parcels is the petitioner and is supportive of the proposed division of the vacated street per RCW 3579040, 1/2 to each. The property was acquired by Pierce County more than 25 years ago for right-of-way purposes, to which the city became heir upon incorporation. Therefore, staff is recommending the applicant pay to the city $28,685, which represents full appraised value. That's per reference Lakewood Municipal Code LMC 1212-160. The full legal description. That portion of the northeast quarter of the northwest quarter of Section 21, Township 19 North, Range 2 east of the Willamette Meridian, City of Lakewood, Pierce County, Washington, more specifically described as follows. Commencing.
We've got it in the packet.
All right, we can skip that.
I think we're good with that. Yeah.
All right, on to the petition. Petition. Maureen Fife, CEO of the Tacoma Pierce County Habitat for Humanity, acting as representative for the principal petitioner, Habitat for Humanity. The principal petitioner is the owner of all adjoining parcels to the proposed vacated area. Notifications. On July 18, 2022, the Lakewood City Council passed resolution number 2022-10, establishing August 15th, 2022 as the date for a public hearing to be held before the City Council on the proposed vacation. In accordance with LMC 1212-090, all property owners of record within 300 feet of the limits of the proposed vacation, according to the records of Pierce County Assessor, were notified by mail of the time, place, and purpose of the hearing. A notice of the hearing was published in the Tacoma News Tribune on July 25th, 2022. Placard was posted at the site where the vacation is to be requested. In accordance with LMC 1212-120, the following criteria are to be considered in determining whether to vacate a street or alley. Whether a change of use or vacation of the street or alley will better serve the public good, whether the street or alley is no longer required for public use or public access, whether the substitution of a new and different public way would be more useful to the public, whether conditions may so change in the future as to provide a greater use or need than presently exists, and whether objections to the proposed vacation are made by owners of private property, exclusive of the petitioners, abutting the street or alley or other governmental agencies or members of the general public. Discussion of the proposed vacation conforms to the aforementioned criteria. A, the vacation of the southwest terminal 36.77 feet of 88th Avenue Court Southwest, a dead-end street located west of Wadsworth Street Southwest, will not alter the existing use of the other rights of way for the public. Vacation of this terminal portion of 88th Avenue Court Southwest will better serve the public good than a change of use. B, the Public Works Engineering Department has determined that the public right of way to be vacated is not required for public use or for public access. C, the substitution of new and different public right of way will not be more useful. D, it is not anticipated that conditions may so change in the future as to provide a greater need for the right of way proposed to be vacated. And E, no written objections to the vacation have been received by the city from private property owners or other governmental agencies or the general public. Department and agency recommendations. Public Works Engineering Department. Staff believes that the proposed vacation conforms to the criteria in LMC Chapter 1212, Street and Alley Vacation Procedures. If the city council chooses to approve the proposed vacation, the following conditions should be imposed. 1, the vacation shall be effective upon payment to the city of Lakewood within 120 days of the date hereof by the owner of the property or assignee adjacent thereto, and to be benefited by the vacation in the amount which represents full appraised value of the 1,471 square feet of right-of-way to be vacated. 2, the city shall retain the right to exercise and grant easements in respect to the vacated land for the construction, repair, and maintenance of public utilities and services if as needed. And then you have your attachments. There's a vacation petition, signed, executed. There's vicinity map, survey, appraisal, and the affidavit of the posting.
Great.
Are all in your packets.
Well, thank you very much for the overview. Are there any questions of any council member of Mr. Sawatsky before I open the matter for the public hearing? Well, thank you very much, Mr. Sawatsky, for coming tonight and providing us the overview and for your service. It looks like you're wearing a different uniform today than the one that you normally wear. So thank you.
Yes, I'm back in the Army for a while.
Very good. Well, again, thank you for that overview. Public testimony on this public hearing is accepted by mail, email, or live, virtual, or in-person comment. Testimony may be sent in advance by mail or email to our city clerk, Ms. Schumacher, at the street address here in Lakewood, 6000 Main Street Southwest, or her email, bschumacher@cityoflakewood.us. Any comments received up to an hour before the meeting have been provided to the council electronically. And Madam Clerk, if you can read the names of those who have submitted comments in advance, that would be appreciated.
Mayor, we received no testimony in advance of this evening's public hearing.
Very good. Those who are testifying today during this public hearing have testimony limited to 3 minutes per person. And if you'd like to provide virtual testimony, you may do so by dialing the telephone number and the meeting ID number as indicated on the screen. Those who have signed in to testify during the public hearing include Mr. Gomer Roseman. You may take the podium, give us your name and address of record for our public hearing, and you'll have visual aids. We have a visual aid in our packet, sir, but we'd be happy to receive it. Thank you. Yeah, we'll share. Yeah. Oh, you're fine. We're good.
Okay. My name's Gomer Roseman. I'm the Director of Site Development Construction with Habitat for Humanity. And I'm here to talk about the street vacation. I thought I'd start kind of with the end in mind, and this first page shows what we're trying to do on the site. Our plan is to provide 12 units of perpetually affordable housing. And as you can see, our site layout has made adjustments for 3 significant trees located on the site. We plan to retain them. These will be, they look like duplexes. They'll actually be townhomes, 2-unit townhomes. And these represent the 37th through 48th new homes that Habitat will have built in the Tillicum neighborhood. We started back in 2014, I think, was our first completion at the invitation of Mr. Don Anderson. And we've been working there ever since. We're going to fully improve Boat Street and 88th Avenue Street Court, Avenue Court Southwest. This will include extensive amount of sewer extension, water main and sewer extension, but especially sewers, over 700 feet of sewer main extension, include 5 manholes, service, of course, to all the new homes which we're building, as well as possible future service to 17 existing homes in the neighborhood. Now, as a result, our first review came back from Pierce County Sewers. And our plan was this, you see the small connecting street between 88th Avenue Court and Boat Street. Our plan was for that to be a private road or private street. And it turns out that county sewer trucks can't turn around in a private street. It has to be a public street. So therefore, if you flip the page, you can see that we are dedicating to the city of Lakewood 2,500 square feet of public right-of-way that formerly private road is now going to become a public alleyway. And the unfortunate downside of that is that we lose square footage in our development and would potentially lose one home site because we don't have enough square footage to make the lot size. So that's the motivation and the reason for the street vacation is to give us the square footage to keep the number of lots and homes that we intended to build. And I think it's pretty simple, pretty straightforward. My appeal to you is if we could forego the $28,000 and, you know, since this is affordable housing, since we're dedicating 2,500 square feet, we're only asking for 1,400 square feet back. I know I didn't go through the proper procedure to maybe do it this way, but I was told that the council can do whatever the heck they want. And if you guys like the idea, I encourage you to go for it. Thanks very much.
Appreciate your testimony, sir. Thank you. It's always nice to hear that once in a while. Next on our list for the public hearing today is Onita Arnold. Well, he doesn't have a right to be back on right now yet. Next on the list is Onita Arnold, and I see she's no longer here. Another person who signed in to speak at the public hearing is Tamara Cook. I don't see Ms. Cook in the audience. Are there any other members, either virtually or in person, wishing to testify at this public hearing on the proposed vacation of the terminal westerly 36 feet of 88th Avenue Court Southwest of the intersection with Wadsworth Street Southwest? Any other individuals present or virtual who wish to testify at the public hearing on this matter? If not, I'll declare the public hearing closed. Mr. Anderson.
Perhaps before we consider this again, we could have again the city attorney opine as to whether we could do a land swap for easement for right of way without an appraisal. That's the second part.
That might be a different kind of transaction than I would be comfortable opining on off the seat of my pants here tonight. If what you're talking about is just a straight up land swap.
I say we vacate it, but the consideration for the vacation would be the conveyance of other real property.
I think you'd want to be very careful to make sure the value is there, but as long as the value is adequate to the property being swapped, we may be able to do that.
Otherwise, we would be gifting public funds. Which is a
Correct.
no-no.
Yeah, that's always going to be the defining characteristic. And what I hear you saying, Councilmember Anderson and members of the council, is that what we would be getting is proper consideration for the property. And as long as we had enough
The
consideration.
underlying question is if we can accept that as valuable consideration for the vacation.
We may have to make sure the appraisal lines up, but yes, we can probably do that. As long as we're not gifting, I would want to make absolutely certain of that.
This kind of the third element of that would be if it's for nonprofit with a benefit to the public, do we have the same latitude with respect to value as we would if it was to another public entity where the Attorney General's opinion is that it has to be some value, but it doesn't have to necessarily be full value.
Well, the answer is typically it depends. I think in this case with Habitat for Humanity and some of the work they do, I would certainly be willing to research that and make sure that we're on all fours, but it's worth taking a look at for sure.
Thank you. Mr. Zawaski, did you have your hand raised to give us some final comments? No. Okay. Very good. Just checking. You look pensive there. We want to make sure we gave you every opportunity. Okay, thank you. That concludes the public hearing on tonight's portion of the agenda for public hearings and appeals. We now turn to resolutions. Resolution number 2022-11, Madam Clerk.
Resolution number 2022-11, adopting the 2021 Tacoma Pierce County Solid and Hazardous Waste Management Plan and recommitting the city of Lakewood to its partnership with Pierce County.
Very good. And for an overview on all things trash talking, we have our assistant to the city manager, Michael Vargas, joining us virtually, who will give us an overview on this request for council action. Mr. Vargas.
Thank you, Mayor, and good evening, Mayor, Deputy Mayor, and council members. So the resolution before the council tonight pertains to the City of Lakewood adopting the 2021 through 2040 Tacoma Pierce County Solid Hazardous Waste Management Plan as the city's own waste management plan. For some brief history, the city has previously adopted the county's last 20-year plan, which was passed in the year 2000. All other incorporated cities and towns in Pierce County have adopted the county's waste management plan. So for this time around, the 2021 plan is built upon the following three guiding principles: equity, protecting human and environmental health, and resiliency. And all of the objectives, strategies, and actions that are included in the plan are founded upon these three pillars. So it is my recommendation that the council pass the resolution, as the alternative would be that the city create its own waste management plan. And that's all I've got. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Other than the fact that there's probably not much we can do to adjust this since everyone else has adopted it. Any other particular items of note for the city of Lakewood as it may or may not change or alter our historic waste management plan? Other than equity, protecting health and environment, and resiliency as kind of the overall sort of tenets of the updated plan?
Yes, Mayor. So the last time I presented on this plan, I know the city council had an inquiry about any sort of response from Pierce County as it pertains to illegal dumping. And, you know, the last time I presented the plan, actually, it went through another iteration through the Pierce County Council, and now there's an action item included, which wasn't there before, which is to develop a Pierce County illegal dumping and litter reduction action plan. And I know that the city also has, you know, its own efforts in illegal dumping and reducing that. So this may be an area of collaboration or, you know, further inquiry at least. So that's all I've got of note.
Great. Any questions of Mr. Vargas before we put a motion on the table to adopt the resolution? If not, all those in favor of is there a motion to adopt resolution 2022-11?
Move to adopt resolution number 2022-11.
Second.
It's been moved by Councilmember Anderson, seconded by Councilmember Farmer, that we adopt resolution 2022-11. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Resolution 2022-11 is quote unquote in the bag. It's been adopted, Mr. Vargas. Mr. Caulfield didn't like the pun, apparently. We now move to unfinished business.
There is none, Mayor.
Any new business?
Not this evening, Mayor.
Then we'll turn to reports by the city manager, Mr. Caulfield.
Thank you, Mayor, and good evening, Deputy Mayor and council members. First off, I'd like to call up Tiffany Spear, our Long Range and Strategic Planning Manager, would like to give you an update on Pierce County countywide planning policies, which the Pierce County Council recently adopted a couple of months ago. So with that, Ms. Spear.
Very good.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Tiffany Spear once more, and City Clerk setting me up here. So this information is also included in your packet for this evening, starting on page 461, if you'd like to refer to it that way, but I will be walking through a PowerPoint presentation here. The 2022 Pierce County countywide planning policies, as was just stated, were actually adopted by the Pierce County Council on June 6th. It is a process then for all of the jurisdictions to review these and ratify them either by taking no action at all or by passing a resolution endorsing, supporting the implementation of the countywide planning policies. There is no editing to these. There is no, we like some of it, but not all of it. It's either a no action or say yes, or it's a say no. And then when they do the calculation of the correct percentage of population and number of cities that did or did not ratify, then they know whether these are actually in effect come November of this year. So this evening, the council has the opportunity just to review these, ask any questions, et cetera. And then there will be action at a future meeting where the council can decide to adopt a resolution or ordinance to say, yes, we ratify, or you could take no action. Again, that's positive, or you could take off alternate action to oppose these countywide planning policies. So as you see on the screen in front of you, countywide planning policies cover a couple of different things. The pyramid at the top there shows you how they fall in the line of regulation and statutory requirements that the city must ultimately follow regarding land use. There's the Growth Management Act at the state statutory level. There's regional countywide planning policies, which are now called Vision 2050. Then there's the countywide planning policies, and then there's the city's comprehensive plan. One of the things that has really affected this new version of the CPPs, is what I'll use as the acronym, is the adoption of Vision 2050. That is the latest version of the regional countywide planning policies. And there's a number of significant changes there related not only to housing requirements and planning, but also recognition of military installations. There's also a concern regarding greenhouse gas emissions and climate change mitigation. And then there's population projections. So just very quickly, this has moved its way through the countywide growth management coordinating committee to the Pierce County Regional Council. And so some of Lakewood's representatives would have seen this at the end of last year. And then again, the county council has taken action. And because of the number of changes and the reformatting that occurred at the same time when these needed changes were reviewed, it is now a completely new document as opposed to a red line strikeout version of the old versus the new countywide planning policies. So you have 6 months to take action as a city. Once more, this could be by taking no action or signing the interlocal agreement that's provided, or you can say that you do not agree and you do not want to sign that agreement. It is recommended that the Lakewood City Council agree and either take no action or sign that ILA. Types of changes, again, reformatting, updating and changing some background reference material that are accompany the policies themselves, and some updated policy direction. There's quite a few topics that are covered. They're listed there. If you remember, the Growth Management Act has 14 goals. There's more that are covered here, but mostly they are responsive to those 14 goals within the GMA. There are new affordable housing policies. And again, this is a big focus of land use planning right now in Puget Sound and Pierce County specifically, given the targeted growth that's planned, about 5.8 million people in the 4 counties that are within in Puget Sound Regional Council by 2050. There's new environmental policies. And again, this is related to climate change in particular. There are new healthy communities policies. So as science continues to support the idea that the way someone lives, where they live, what surrounds their living environment affects their health, that is also being incorporated into these policies. And then there's the new military installation policies, which are thanks in large part to efforts by the City of Lakewood and the SSMCP. Up until Vision 2050, the region simply did not recognize military installations at all. And so land use planning paid no attention to Joint Base Lewis McChord on a regional level, nor Naval Base Kitsap, nor anything that's in King County or up in Snohomish County. So this is again something that now there is recognition, A, that they are there, B, that they affect things that happen outside of their fence, and C, there needs to be some compatibility and ongoing communication between civilian and military populations. There is also promotion of tribal coordinating. And also there's new transportation policies. Some of this relates to climate change again, electrification of the transportation system, looking at capital facility planning as well. This is where we're at in the graphic form in terms of process. We are looking at the ratification process. It takes up to 6 months. And then the city council, once it takes its action across the county, that goes back to the county council to verify that, as you see on the bottom left, a minimum of 14 of the jurisdictions with at least a total population of 687,825 have ratified the countywide planning policies. So with that, I'm happy to take any questions. Otherwise, the full countywide planning policies were included in tonight's packet. And again, it's an up or down. So happy to answer questions.
Thank you. Any questions? Mr. Brandstetter.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Ms. Spear, one of your slides spoke about one of the policy areas that had, well, I gathered some change that talked about affordable housing in historically underserved communities. And how was historically underserved communities defined in terms of this document? Is it defined geographically that they identified them that way, or are they described by population demographics?
It's demographics. So first and foremost, racial, historical, for instance, redlining, which did occur in Tacoma and in the city of Seattle. Lakewood, not so much, but there are other jurisdictions in the region that have to deal with that as well. So continuing to counteract historical land use policies that were overtly exclusionary to certain groups. But it's also taking a look at those that are at low income, regardless of race, regardless of ethnicity, and making sure that they are being given equitable review and treatment under land use planning.
So are there some specific areas of Lakewood that are called out in these policies as being historically underserved?
Not in the countywide planning policies themselves, that it will explain that historically underserved populations or areas of a jurisdiction need to have additional attention paid and action taken perhaps, but they don't say this area in this city, this area in that city at all. However, as the council is well aware, I'm sure there's a lot of evidence on a lot of different fronts that show parts of the city where there has been different results for whatever reason for certain populations, certain areas of the city where additional attention needs to be paid. Certainly the city has paid a lot of attention already, for instance, to Tillicum and the amount of money and effort that's been spent there to help improve that since incorporation. But there may be other areas where the city wants to take some additional action too.
So, you're probably the most knowledgeable person present on the current state of the city's comprehensive plan. Are there any things that ratification of these policies is going to require us to make some comprehensive plan modifications in 2023?
I think I understand the question. The literal ratification of this countywide planning policy package would not affect the fact that the city will need to do its 2024 periodic review. And there are a number of other either statutes or regulations or policies that will require some in-depth review of the city's zoning, environmental protections, housing density and types that are allowed in various parts of the city. That's going to happen regardless of specifically the CPPs.
Okay. And then on one other topic with respect to the relationships with and challenges that relate to JBLM, and it's good that they say that JBLM should be part of the equation when looking at transportation projects to do that. But for Lakewood, the policies provide any change or any framework into what we have been for multiple years trying to get renegotiation, clarification, greater fairness in the agreement between the city of Lakewood and Pierce County regarding the UGA boundaries on JBLM that include some areas of JBLM that are in the UGA for Lakewood, but that essentially we've been in a situation of where if there was ever a move to parties 1 and 2 between the Department of Defense and Lakewood to do some annexation to do away with the poison pill provisions that the county has made on any agreement regarding Lakewood annexing its actual element, that portion of its UGA that falls within the boundary. Does this have addressed that in any way?
Not explicitly. What it does do, though, is make sure that jurisdictions, Lakewood and Pierce County included, are working proactively with the base to ensure that its operations are continuing in a healthy and productive way, and that there is knowledge and coordination with cities by JBLM when operations may affect transportation, social services, human services. I don't know enough about the history of the annexation conversation to be able to answer you this evening. I can do some research and try to get back to you on that, but this is really a higher level discussion about just recognizing that a base, a military installation of whatever kind, and those who work there, who live there or live off base and work there, do affect the cities and jurisdictions around them.
Okay, and then were there any of the policies that address Camp Murray?
No.
As in the same light, but with lesser intensity?
The way that the countywide planning policies reflect the regional planning policies is to say that the military installations with at least 5,000 service members are the ones that they really focus the direction and policy encouragement on. Camp Murray isn't that big. However, Lakewood has a long-standing relationship with Camp Murray that I think is very open and positive, and that this in no way would interrupt that.
So there isn't anything in these policies that would be problematic for our looking to move forward for the annexation or some other ownership criteria regarding the Department of Natural Resources boat launch?
Not that I'm aware of, no.
Nothing in these, okay.
No.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Mr. Anderson.
So, 2 questions. First one is there anything in this that will require us to make a code change?
Eventually, yes, we will be doing code change, possibly zoning changes and comprehensive plan language changes that reflect what's being adopted in the countywide planning policies.
And when would that be?
As part of the 2024 periodic review,
So it's not immediate.
no.
Second is only half cynical, like in that I would call this virtue signaling read real slow regarding redlining. So up until the end of World War II, the redlining in Tacoma included excluding even Southern Europeans from the North End. And now the remedy for that is to build low-income housing in the hilltop and on the east side. Is that the focus of this policy?
I think the focus of the policy is more to make sure that any vestiges of that type of regulation is out of code, because believe it or not, there is some of that still around, either in codes for some of the cities or of course in CCNRs or HOA agreements that may be out there. My own neighborhood has one that says no Asians, for instance. So just making sure that there's recognition that that used to happen, making sure it doesn't happen going forward.
Yeah, but the red line excluded people from areas. No, it's essentially says, okay, so we'll build. low-income housing in the areas where they were forced to go. Is that?
I don't think so, because the way the regulations are being and policies are being crafted is to say that actually the low-income housing goes everywhere. It's not just in those areas where they were historically excluded or historically required to go. It's citywide.
So but it's historically underserved areas, and those historically underserved areas, Pierce County started with the Hilltop and East Side,
Mhm.
because
It's-
people were excluded from the north end.
This language here, the historically underserved communities, that's not a geographic reference. Those are the people that were treated a particular way. So whether it's due to ethnicity, whether it's due to income, for whatever reason, it's not saying this geographic area had this happen, so now we're going to do something in this geographic area. It's saying this group of people has been historically discriminated against, and we're going to try to reconcile, correct that with going forward, new policy, new action.
Okay. It's, you'll notice there aren't 10 cities in the north end of Tacoma either.
Any other questions? Mr. Brokey?
Thank you, Ms. Trier. Because I'm glad military installations are now included. That's something that Pierce County fought for and Lakewood fought for a long time. Page 549 of our packet, military installations and compatibility, and it lists a lot of RCWs and national port readiness. So I guess I could ask a series of questions on here, dealing with Lakewood and then dealing with the port. So let's start with the port. Tacoma has a sub-area plan going that may or may not be helpful to National Port Readiness Network. I mean, how does something like that fit into something like this?
I'm not going to be able to answer that tonight. I'll have
Okay.
to do some follow-up research for you, sir.
And then the next question, you come to Lakewood, we have this whole area, the AQs.
AQs, yep.
Corridor 1, Corridor 2, or whatever it is. And I'm trying to understand what the impact of agreeing to this does. Does this give us more power to say, hey, we don't want people in there? It's not safe. In Air Corridor 1, it's absolutely not safe. In Air Corridor 2, it's kind of partially safe. I mean, does this give us, I don't see tools in here, but does it give us the legal basis to begin to make some difficult decisions if we need to, or if some future council needs to?
Personally, on a Monday night, Tiffany Spear would say yes, because there is now statutory language that requires compatibility between inside and outside of the fence. It also is looking at the safety requirements and saying you will comply with that as well. The city has done above and beyond, in my own opinion. Again, it's the land use zoning over time in Air Corridor 1 and 2, with the intention of eventually reducing density and the types of land uses there that are unsafe per Department of Defense and FAA studies, crashes that have happened in the area in the past. And now that we have this regional policy, as well as the statutory references that you mentioned, there are more and more reasons to say what Lakewood has been arguing for is correct and supporting the position that it has taken historically on reducing density, taking residential uses out of that area, and not only dealing with the clear zone itself, but also looking at Air Corridor 1 and 2 and finding the appropriate uses for those areas that reduce risk to life and safety.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Well, very good. I know this will come before us sometime before the deadline.
They will be here, sir, on September 6th. So I believe your next regular council meeting.
Very good. We'll see if everyone's ready by that time, but our outside date is sometime in November, the 14th, I believe.
It's actually not until November, so there's
November, right.
plenty of time.
Great. Very good. Anything else, Mr. Caulfield?
Just a few more updates, if I might, Mayor. Along the lines of the Pierce County Regional Council, The Transportation Coordination Committee, which makes recommendation of PCRC on transportation funding, recently made a recommendation on how to allocate an additional federal funding monies of $2.6 million. And after some discussion, TCC voted to provide that funding to the cities of Fife, Puyallup, University Place, and Lakewood. And for Lakewood, it would total $671,000 for the design and right-of-way acquisition in support of the 100th Street project from South Tacoma Way to Lakeview. So this recommendation will be coming forward to PCRC, I believe, as part of your August meeting, which I think is next week, actually, or later this week. If I'm doing my math right. Yeah. If not, it'll come forward to you in September. Also along those lines, back in July, the City Council approved a contract for the construction overlay project on Pacific Highway South and South Tacoma Way. And as noted in the agenda bill, if you recall, we had a project shortfall of about $167,000 because of increased cost and the like. And the recommendation at the time was to backfill that with some existing one-time monies. However, as we had communicated, we did go back to WashDOT because the project is funded primarily with grant funds. We did go back to WashDOT, explain the situation, the increased costs, and they did provide a proportional share totaling $115,000 in addition to the grant monies that they had already provided in support of the project. So that leaves the shortfall of instead of $167,000 is now $52,000, and so that will be backed up with some existing one-time REAP money. So I just wanted to thank our Public Works Engineering Department for following through on that. I think as previously reported, Pierce County did extend the deadline for almost a month for the sewer ARPA funds that they have available. And as we had communicated, we had already applied for 2 projects as well as helping sponsor a Habitat for Humanity project. However, we did reach out to Pierce County staff and said, hey, could we submit another one? So we did. We submitted a 3rd project, and it's the Grant Avenue and Orchard Street Sewer Extension Project. And so in total, for our 3 project, we're requesting $2.4 million. So we should know later in the fall whether or not we'll get those funds. And if we do, what it does is it pushes up a couple of projects to get done sooner rather than later as outlined in our sewer CIP. We also continue to have a really productive conversation with the Nisqually Indian Tribe. It's a great collaboration. A number of projects and improvements have been identified down at Fort Steilacoom Park that will feature their culture and their history. And so that is moving forward. The estimated cost is about $250,000, which will likely be a state capital budget request from both the city and I would imagine the Nisqually Indian Tribe. The timeline right now as of today is for the Nisqually Indian Tribe, their Parks Commission, followed by their Tribal Council, to take action and review this in September, and then for us to provide this body an update the latter part of September, and also then taking action on whether or not you want to support this partnership, which would probably occur as part of your regular meeting, the first regular meeting in October. Also, and I know Councilmember Anderson brought this up recently, we've been reaching out to Camp Murray regarding the annexation analysis report that was done in 2020 and that was presented to this body in January of 21. And if you recall, the outcome of that study was that Camp Murray wasn't interested in annexing into the city primarily because of some of the financial burdens that were attached to that. However, they were interested in continuing the dialogue regarding improvements down at the boat launch. So we have reached out to them on, next steps there and, a strategy or steps that they might want to take. And the reason for that is that's something that we would at the very least like to include in this body's state legislative policy manual as we look out the next couple of years, if not elevating it to actually the state legislative agenda. So more to come on that in the next couple of months or so. So we're looking to meet with them here in the near future. Also, with the announcement of our police chief, Mike Zarro, retiring, he's going to be leaving us in mid-February. We have initiated the search and the recruitment process. Actually, I think it officially kicked off on Friday morning with a conversation that I had with a search firm that we're bringing on to help us in assisting in the recruitment process. The process we expect to take through the end of the year. However, there is some flexibility built into it if we need to extend into the early part of 2023 as well. There will be an opportunity for public input and feedback and meeting of candidates into Lake as we go through the process. So most likely more to follow on that. About a month and a half ago or so, Pierce County Economic Development Department was in here to give you an update on the partnership that we have with them regarding the BIPOC Business Accelerator Program. And just wanted to let you know that Pierce County and other participants, including the city of Lakewood, is going to host an event to celebrate and recognize the graduate businesses that have participated in this program, and there's about 200 of them or so. And it's expected to be held in the morning hours of October 13th, the exact time to be determined, but I just wanted to give you all a heads up on that. And then lastly, just wanted to confirm that we have conversed with the 2-2 Stryker Brigade, and they have confirmed that Friday, September 30th at 6 p.m. is a date and time that would work well for a dinner event between all of you, as well as Colonel Rorman and his leadership team. So I just wanted to close the loop on that with you.
Have you heard back from dining club manager? I have not yet.
We have not, but we're in the we're going to be following up this week on that, Mayor. So with that, that's my report.
Any questions of Mr. Caulfield? I have a few. Anyone else? Just a little follow-up, Mr. Caulfield, on some of the public comment tonight with regard to village apartments. I know that we received some information that Mr. Buer did spend significant time and effort to address some of their concerns. Can you just kind of elucidate that for our friends?
Certainly, Mayor. Yeah, Mr. Buer actually met with those folks during your meeting last week, and then had a subsequent conversation with them and several others in the following days. And then him and his team, they then reached out to LASA. And so LASA has been working with them on trying to identify resources and assistance. And so that's been ongoing for the last couple of weeks. In fact, I don't know if they met today or if it's later this week. They're going to be having another round of dialogue with the folks out there. And as far as some of the issues that were brought up tonight, I took some notes, the trash, and if there's
rental housing safety program
illicit
issues,
activity
perhaps.
and things going on down there, we can certainly take a look at that. And I know Mr. Buer has also reached out to the his rental housing safety program team as well. And so, but based on some of the feedback that we received this evening, we can also have code enforcement and CSRT take a look at some of the issues down there.
That would be great. And maybe a couple of folks out on patrol can make a few presence rounds. I know they do throughout the city, but
Sure.
perhaps they can
Oh,
make some
yeah.
emphasis patrols in those areas over the next few week or so.
Absolutely, Mayor.
That would be great. Any other questions? If not, we'll turn to reports by the council. Mr. Boki, we'll start with you.
Thank you, Mayor. Well, just briefly, really enjoyed the jazz night at and the car show on Saturday night at the Colonial Center. I thought it was well done, and I'll let Deputy Mayor Moss tell you a lot more about it.
That remains to be seen. Yes. Mr. Branstetter. Ms. Bell.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to say it was great to hear about how the ARPA funds are being allocated and utilized, and I really enjoyed hearing about that. And just also wanted to just support you in how you spoke about the village apartments and the follow-up there. Thank you, City Manager, of what's already been done. So I just appreciate hearing that and that something is being done and there is an effort made. So thank you to staff too.
Ms. Farmer.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I had the opportunity to sit in for Councilmember Branstetter at the Lakewood Lake City Neighborhood Association meeting this week, and it was my first time at an in-person neighborhood associating neighborhood association meeting since COVID began. And so realizing that I started my council term 2 months ahead of COVID. So it was just kind of bizarre for me, but absolutely wonderful to see those folks in person. And we had a great meeting. And I wanted to report back a couple of items. They are very, very interested in how to grow the neighborhood association program. And they would love to help whatever that looks like. They would like to help the rest of the city do that. And so Mr. Woods in particular is interested in knowing more about it. So I'll throw that out there. They would like to request, if we know the meetings enough in advance, to add the meetings to the Connection magazine that comes out, so that there's an additional way of letting residents know that these
That's a good idea. Yeah.
meetings are happening, at least in some parts of the city.
Yeah.
We had a couple of folks there who really want the farmer's market to go back to a morning time or mid-afternoon time, and they want it to be back in the city center. So just reporting back on that. A couple of folks requested that Summerfest be considered as a 2-day event because there was a lot going on and it was a very packed day and traffic may or may not have been impacted. And so they're like, well, what about a 2-day event? And then they had some nice things to say about a Mr. Green and a habitat project, but I was a little unclear on what exactly that was. But again, they were very appreciative of the city's efforts with the neighborhood association. And let's see. And then I was also at the street festival. Not being much of a jazz fan, I stuck close to the food, and looking forward to the next one with a different type of. There's something for everybody. That's it for me.
Great. In the neighborhood association kickstart opportunity, that may be something we can discuss during the budget cycle, whether there's some seed money for simple things like, munchies for them or something. I remember years ago, they were asking about those kinds of things to incentivize people to come. So anyway, more to follow on that we can talk about during the budget cycle, but good point on that. Mr. Anderson.
Thank you. Adams. At least Councilmember Bell and I don't have enough bandwidth up here to download a PDF of the agenda backup. It freezes because it won't download fast enough. Oh. And it says sometimes it says I only have 10% of a signal. I'm sitting right here. The library. Predictably, the library is becoming a camping area. There's on the way tonight, I checked, and yes, there are people there. There's a boarded up window and there's somebody living in a van in the parking lot. So before it becomes an urban center that merits growth management attention, I believe we should pass a no camping in public property ordinance so that we have some type of club to hold over the library's head. And then this is, I think, probably something to consider is, in my view, it's probably a failure of the council. Went by Springbrook Park. Nobody was there on a nice sunny day and school isn't in session. It's not a very inviting place. It's dry. The only thing that's grown are unmowed weeds. And there's no people, there's no program. So we have, and there was only one camper there in the far corner, somebody with a blanketed up car in some of the new property that we haven't done anything with yet. That can be whether it's, irrigation, we need to provide the resources for maintenance. It's not unique to Lakewood. Parks get capital money. They don't get enough to be maintained and run programs. And especially in that neighborhood, I think when we look at our next budget cycle, we should look at that very carefully to actually utilize that in a better banner than just having third-party groups come in and do something now and then. So that's my rant. Thanks.
Very good, thank you. I just had a few comments. Just kidding. Deputy Mayor Moss.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First, I wanted to say that we appreciate the citizens that come and bring their issues to us. It's 7 of us and we can't be everywhere at all times. So we appreciate that. And then we do follow up when we can. So just wanted to make that clear that we just don't ignore it. We just don't see it. We're not there. So anyway, Mr. Mayor, I'm so sorry, but happy that you were not able to attend the street and jazz concert on Saturday. I had a wonderful time judging the cars, talking to the people. Everybody was in a good mood. It was a really good program. And I think the location is perfect for our local citizens that are so able to come to these instead of going to the big ones and with the kids and stuff like that. So I just wanted to say that it was a good event. I am happy that I had the opportunity, and the 62 Chevy Impala Super Sport was hot. I love that. Thank you.
Was it well attended overall?
It was based on the time of day and the time of the year. I think that may have had something to do with it because all day it was cloudy, and then at the evening it became really beautiful. And it was, I thought it was well attended.
Great.
I haven't heard the number. Yes, he was the young man that won the, yeah, he was young. That won the mayor's favorite. He bought the car when he was attending Lakes High School, and he paid $50 for it. And he's had it ever since.
That's great.
Yeah, so he did a beautiful job with that. So thank you.
Well, thanks for doing that and standing in and enjoying the day. It was certainly a beautiful day. With regard to your comment about the public comment period, I think we all really appreciate constructive feedback on all of these issues. What is hard to appreciate is feedback that is not constructive in terms of tone or demeanor, or frankly, a complete lack of factual support. And that's the challenge I'm having lately. And I know often it's because people just don't know what they don't know. And it's our job to do as best we can to provide education and productive feedback so that the proper and factual information gets disseminated in an appropriate, meaningful, and constructive way. So I'm very hopeful that those that enjoy coming to council or don't necessarily enjoy it, but feel compelled to come to council to share with us, that they do so knowing that we really take it seriously when the feedback is helpful, when it's constructive. On the other hand, when it's not constructive or helpful, we find it difficult to do much with, such as Mr. Haugen's feedback. But we have to allow Mr. Haugen, like others, to have their 3 minutes to speak. It's not helpful because it's not germane to city business. I understand that. But we just want to make sure that we maintain a sense of decorum so that we can all do our best moving forward on it. With regard to some of the comments we heard on the village apartments on the rent issues, we all know that rents are challenged, not just in the city of Lakewood, but throughout the South Sound and frankly, Western Washington. There are many requests for cities to consider rent control. As I understand it, in the absence of authorizing legislation by our state legislature, rent control is not a tool in a municipality's tool bag. And the city attorney can correct me if I'm wrong, but rent control is not something we can do. There are things that cities have done and are doing throughout Western Washington to address rent issues that can be done, such as perhaps extending the notice time frame by which landlords can increase rents. The city of Olympia is doing a proposed ordinance on that, as have other cities around the region. So there are tools that perhaps can move the ball forward for folks struggling to pay significant rent increases, which all of us have seen. But that would be a discussion to be had, you know, by council down the road if there's interest in doing so. So I just throw it out there to confirm that while we understand the need by many to have limits on the increases in their rent, rent control is not a policy that a municipality can pursue. There are other potential options in the Landlord Tenant Act that cities do have some authority to adopt, such as extended notice provisions for rent increases and the like. If that is something this council wishes to discuss, think about it, and we can come back and direct staff to perhaps give us an overview on possible options versus those that are not possible. So I just leave it at that. But we don't want to come across as not caring, because that's not it. We do care. I sense that a lot, but there's just limitations of what we can do.
Mayor,
Yes, ma'am.
I would be interested in knowing more. I don't know what our preferred timeline would be. I know that we've already tasked staff with doing quite a few things and we're coming up on budget season. So I'll leave that timing. Maybe we can have a discussion later about that, but I would be interested in knowing if what is within our regulatory toolbox.
Sure, and it may be as simple as me reaching out to MRSC to kind of pose a question, and they can come back with and they have white papers on that, I think, already. So it would be hopefully not too staff intensive to provide that overview. Let's see, on the issue of the pending LTAC applications, which we're going to be reviewing as a committee sometime in early September. If Ms. Watcher can kind of give me a little primer on the legal aspects of both capital and operational funds and requests, so I can be sure that I'm in the know about what I understand to be the limitations on capital requests, in that they have to benefit a city-owned facility, because that is something that's a little bit new to me anyway, in my role coming up as chair of the LTAC committee.
Mr. Mayor, I think I have provided that opinion. I can certainly
Did you? Okay.
issue it again. And what I would tell you is whatever you knew about LTAC last legislative session, you should always check again.
Got
That
it.
is one that gets visited with some regularity.
Right, and I just want to make sure I'm most up to speed. So if you send it, I will defer and indicate that it must have been an internet issue tonight. My capacity must be lower than normal in receiving quality information. Yeah, great. Well, my last comment is, you know, again, if you build it, people will come. I thought the Tuesday evening farmers market and the concert in the park were fantastic. I thought they were well attended. I do think that the feedback I have received, I'm sure it's different depending on who you ask, but the feedback from both the vendors and many of the folks who come to the farmers market, they love the time. Many do, not all. And the location just really facilitates the market, I think, quite well, especially when you have the summer concert series. So, you know, you can't be all to everyone, but I think staff is doing a really good job with that particular program. So thank staff for that. There's a Connections magazine coming out. I received a Council Corner sort of draft that I'm going to take a look at. I'll try to send it out to you. We're on a short timeline, Mr. Caulfield. I think we have to have it back sooner than later, right? Like this week. So I will do the best I can to review it. I'll send it out to you folks for some comments, which have to be directed back to Mr. Caulfield, not to me. But we'll get her done because we know it's important. I like the comment about making sure neighborhood meetings are included in terms of the timing. So that is it for my comments. We now are going to recess into executive session for about 10 minutes pursuant to RCW 423110 sub 1 sub I to discuss with our legal counsel litigation or potential litigation to which our agency, the city, is or likely could become a party when public knowledge regarding that discussion is likely to result in an adverse legal or financial consequence. So that will be the first executive session. The next portion will be an additional 20-minute recess or extension of our executive session for about 20 minutes pursuant to RCW 423110-1G to review the performance of a public employee. The council is not expected to take action following the executive session other than to adjourn the meeting. So at this time, we'll be in recess. Give yourselves about 4 or 5 minutes to take a quick break, and then we'll meet in at 9:15.